over 50% of the Fortune 100 companies already have a chief product officer. So this is not just about an entry-level role. There's an entire function that is extremely strategic, and I think it's good for all of us. So with that, obviously the market grew and there were more and more options available. When I started, I don't think there was any university offering degrees in product or master's degrees, and now there are more. And I believe that that's a good thing. It's a response to the market opportunity.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Product Unfiltered. I'm thrilled to welcome Carlos Gonzalez to our podcast today. Carlos is the founder and CEO of Product School, one of the biggest product organizations helping millions of aspiring and experienced product managers level up their PM skills. He's also the author of Amazon bestseller, The Product Book, How to Become a Great Product Manager. We're excited to have Carlos on our podcast. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much, Carlos. Carlos, before we get deep into product management, would love to know more about your journey founding Product School. Where did you start it? What were some experiences that you gained? And tell us more about Product School in general.
Sure. Well, I'm the founder and CEO at Product School, as you mentioned. I started the company 10 years ago, before product management was cool. So I'm originally from Spain, moved to Silicon Valley a long time ago as a student. And the reason why I did is because I first studied computer science in Spain. And I'm one of those engineers that didn't want to spend the rest of his life coding or applying engineering. I wanted to leverage my technical background in a different way, even though I didn't know what the options were. So that's kind of what led me to Silicon Valley. I came here to study in business school with the hope that I would learn how to kind of connect both worlds. The reality is that business school was also very disconnected from what I wanted to do. It's very high level. I was reading books, writing essays, having a lot of fun, and I'm sure I learned something interesting. But the reality is that I felt always in between those two worlds, technology and business. And at that time, I didn't even know what product management was. And it's only when I spent more time here, I realized there was a lot of high-tech companies like Google, Meta, or Uber that had that role. And that was the perfect blend right in between technology and business. So after my own experiences in both engineering school and business school, I realized that I wanted to create a solution to my own problem. And I created a product school, which is right in between. And it's about helping people grow their careers in product. So 10 years forward, today we're a community with over 2 million members from all over the world. And all of our certifications that we offer are delivered by top instructors. They are not teachers, they are practitioners, product leaders who are actively working at those top companies such as Google, Meta, Netflix, Airbnb, and Uber.
Carlos, it's very exciting to see because a lot of people come with the same background where they have some technical skills and they come for business schools. And eventually they get into the grind of trying to get into those big names and get into the product roles, building products there. But you took a step differently and thought, okay, let me solve the problem of educating people what exactly is product management, right? So in those 10 years of time span where you have been running product school so far, if you have to highlight top three challenges which you have faced while building this community and growing it so rapidly, what would be the top three challenges?
Top three. All right.
Yeah.
Well, so as you first mentioned, I think it's common for a lot of entrepreneurs to try to solve their own problems. And that was the itch that I was trying to scratch when I started product school. And the community was a community of one at that point because it was just for myself. So that was probably the first challenge, is to figure out how many other people have that similar problem and would care about the solution that I'm creating, which is basically training. And so taking the community from 1 to 10 sounds small, but it was extremely hard because we had to validate that there was something that some people were willing to, they were going to love and hence willing to pay for. And sometimes in startups, it's just easy to go into okay, how do I scale this into millions? And there's a point at which it makes sense to do that. But at the very beginning, it's all about doing things that don't scale and going one customer at a time. So that was probably like number one challenge, I would say, for me.
Mm-hmm.
The next big challenge was to start getting from 10 to 100. And that at that time that would require different mindset. So when I started the company, I was the first instructor. The classes for our certifications were delivered in person in San Francisco. At
Mhm.
some point, we started expanding to other parts of the US. And even outside the US, we had a total of 16 campuses. 14 of them were in the US, and then we had London and Toronto. Clearly, I couldn't be the instructor in all of those places. So, creating a platform where we could empower product leaders participate as instructors was a very, very tough problem to solve because I'm always obsessed with ensuring quality. And
Mhm.
that moment of delegating part of your product, part of your baby to others is scary, especially if you don't have the right mechanisms to ensure quality. But
Mhm.
again, figure it out. And that was probably
Mhm.
like number two
Mhm.
top challenge. Today, by the way, Product School is fully live online. So we have an online campus and we have students from all over the world. Um, and then number three is expansion into training for large companies. Because
Mhm.
what we figure out is that over 90% of our students were professionals where we had full-time jobs already. And in some cases, they were trying to switch careers and become product managers. We also had programs for existing product managers, PMs or senior PMs that wanted to become people managers and get a promotion to become directors of product, for example. So a lot of those students weren't paying out of pocket. They were using stipend from their companies. So when we started noticing patterns and seeing that there were certain employees from the same company, that gave us the opportunity to go
Mhm.
and talk to the person that approved those investments to do larger, more custom trainings for all of their employees.
Mhm.
That's
But
awesome.
Carlos,
Mhm.
when you started, that's a challenge which me and Utkarsh also face. Like, how do you show your credibility to your audience or to whom you're teaching? Because you also started at some point making those content, or you were the instructor. But how did you enter? Like, what was your step to build credibility in the market first, and then probably show them that okay, I bring in some quality, and that's why people are coming back to me.
That's a great question because that's something that it's always been top of mind for me as a student, as someone who was trying to create a solution to my own problem first. I've always been obsessed with learning from the best. And I wanted to create a space where instructors were the absolute best product leaders, not just not a teacher, not someone who's not a practitioner. With all due respect to teachers, I wanted someone who's in the with rolling up their sleeves and getting things done. So all of our instructors keep their full-time jobs and they are actively working at some of the top companies that I mentioned, mostly in Silicon Valley. So to me, that was a key thing. So spending time looking for who are the best and then coming up with a strong value proposition to bring them to allow them to come and share their time with us wasn't easy. And the main thing for us, the main value proposition was actually to allow them to give back to the community because they didn't have a product school when they broke into product, right?
Mhm.
So this they also resonated with our mission and they wanted to be part of the solution for the next generation of product leaders. So that's one of the levers. Like the quality of the instructor, I believe, is absolutely critical. But then quality is touching pretty much everything, right? So the quality of the students, we have a strong application process depending on the certification that we offer. So there's one program for the aspiring product managers that is open to anyone, but then the programs for the existing product managers that are trying to become directors, they are not for everyone. They need to prove that they have the right level of experience so they can add value to the class. All of our trainings are delivered live online in very small cohorts.
Mhm.
So again, curating the amount of students and limiting the amount of students who are going to be in that cohort is very important because at the end of the day, you are
Mhm.
spending a lot of time with these people and with your instructor. You are building a mini community. You're building a long-term relationship that is hopefully going to help you throughout the rest of your career.
No, that's really interesting, Carlos. A very interesting point that you mentioned, Carlos, earlier in your conversation was how product management has evolved. Like 10 years back, product management was not cool. But now you see every other person, be it a software engineer or a business analyst, want to get into product management. So while you have gone through these 10 years of journey, I would love to understand how has product management changed? Like currently, like as me and Rahul, we went in the product management route through a master's program where we had multiple resources that we can follow and learn product management, be it how to decode product management by Lois Lynn, that is book, to various podcasts being run in the industry, certifications, master's program, a number of different ways to learn. So according to you, Carlos, like you mentioned at product school also, your resources are tailored specifically to different audiences. So if I have to ask you about three different personas, one persona who is an aspiring product manager who has not got into PM, second, who is already a PM and want to upskill themselves, and finally, product leaders like product directors. So for these three personas, what kind of resources are right to follow at their specific part of product journey?
Yeah, you're right. Those are the three key personas today for us because for me, it's not about width, it's about depth. And similar to the previous question about quality, I made the intentional decision to focus on one discipline and try to go as deep as possible. So in our case, that's product. And that's part of our DNA. You won't see product school now teaching, I know, cybersecurity or design or other things that are very important, but that can also distract you from the main focus. So trying to go to do one thing well and go as deep as possible is very important to ensure that quality. And then related to the content or the discipline of product, how it's evolved. You are completely right. When I started 10 years ago, there was very little access to information. And not too many companies were hiring product managers. At least the ones that weren't working in high tech. Today, this is mainstream. It's not a secret anymore. We're seeing that many companies are hiring product managers regardless of their industry or location. In fact, over 50% of the Fortune 100 companies already have a chief product officer. So this is not just about an entry-level role. There's an entire function that is extremely strategic, and I think it's good for all of us. So with that, obviously, the market grew and there were more and more options available. When I started, I don't think there was any university offering
Yeah.
degrees in product or master's degrees, and now there are more. And I believe that's a good thing. It's a response to the market opportunity. The counter to that is that there's also a lot of things that are not high quality because a lot
Yeah.
of people just ride the wave. And we try to focus on quality and not lose that magic that made us unique in the first place when the market was much smaller. So I try to treat our certifications as a product. So it's not just about bringing the best instructors, curating the experience with people who are really good fit for the program and in a small cohort. It's also evolving the actual content and the format for it. So super hands-on. The whole point of this is people best learn when they build. So we try to encourage students and make them build products and go through the entire life cycle, get feedback from the instructor as if they were product managers already and they were working together. And then the other piece that I think is, and by the way, to that, it has evolved a lot. Like we evolve our curriculum every quarter, more or less, because we have so many cohorts going
Yeah.
on. There's a really good feedback mechanism for us to understand what's happening with students, with instructors. And some of those adjustments are small, but every year or so we make like major adjustments to the content just to make sure that we're always up to date. And that's something that more traditional school probably can't do just because of the amount of other programs that they
Yeah.
have at the same time.
Mhm. No, that's true. And very interesting point you mentioned, Carlos, that more than 50% of the Fortune 100 companies have got a CPO. So let's say tomorrow there's a company where there's no product role existing, and then you have to pitch them that they need to have product roles. What are some of the insights which you have generated, which you can share with the company to show them the value product people brings to the table and why having product leaders and product managers are important for an organization?
That's such a tough pitch because I always say that this type of influence has to come from the top. And not that it's impossible to convince a CEO of the value of product, but what I always discuss with our students, especially the ones who are aspiring product managers, is that it is much more likely for them to become PMs at a company where there is a certain level of product culture, where the CEO is keen on product, maybe because it was a product manager before, or they have already product managers on the team. So it's not like starting from scratch. That would be my first piece of advice. Sometimes
Mm-hmm.
the best way to go about it is to find other alternatives. Now, if this is the only option and we are in front of someone who absolutely doesn't see the value of product or doesn't see it enough, and this the best way to show value is to show business how product is driving business outcomes. I know that this can be sometimes hot take because PMs don't typically report for revenue, but I think that should change because it's adding value to the user is table stakes. It's critical. We absolutely need to build something that customers love, but they also need to be willing to pay for. They also that somehow product has to be driving revenue for the organization. So product managers need to show a CEO or someone who's not in product how this is making money to the company, either by growing revenue or reducing cost. Otherwise, it becomes too much of a subjective conversation.
No, absolutely. Carlos, quick follow-up question here. I think that's very interesting. You talked about product culture. So looking at product culture from a different lens, from a lens of an aspiring PM who is planning to enter the industry, how as an aspiring PM I can know that yes, the product culture of this organization is great? Because when we talk to HRs or recruiters, they usually talk about organization culture, but it's very difficult to gauge the product culture of any organization. So what
Mhm.
are some tips and some insights you would like to share with the audience?
Absolutely. And that's true. And also when you are applying for an entry to mid-level role and if you don't have that many options, it's harder to be picky. And I understand that it's just not easy. The getting a PM job is very well respected, it's very highly paid, but at the same time, it's also very hard to get. So it requires a lot of effort. One of the things that we spend a lot of time on as part of our certification for aspiring product managers is to teach our students how to get a job. Because I always tell them that learning how to do the job is as important as learning how to get the job. Because if you can't get the job, then I don't think you're going to be able to showcase what you're capable of, right? So that component is around 25% of the time during our program, and it involves a series of actions. So first of all, it's job search strategy. It's really treating yourself like a product and going to market doing some discovery first. Instead of just clicking the apply now button to every single opportunity that comes across your desk, try to spend more time understanding for who you are as a product person. Like, what are some of your must-haves and what are some of your nice-to-haves in terms of location, right? Like, are you open to work in person, or do you have any visa limitations if you're trying to apply for a company overseas? Are you open to remote work? Are you open to a role that is more junior? Are you okay with a company that is mid-size versus public? Like, there's some criteria. There is no right or wrong answer, but I think it's important to identify the variables, most of those variables, and have a point of view on what are some of the points that you absolutely do not want to negotiate, and which ones are the ones where you are more flexible. Ideally, you are flexible on most of those points. Otherwise, it's going to be harder to get enough companies that are a good fit, especially when you're trying to get your first job. I think as you grow in your career, it's relatively easier to be pickier because hopefully you have more track record. But at the very beginning, I think it's good to at least identify the landscape. And then with that in mind, start looking at what are the companies that fit some of that criteria. And I understand that some of those variables are harder to get from the outside, right? Product culture, how much of a product culture there is in a certain company? Well, let's put that on hold for now. There are other variables that are easier to guess, right? Like, what's the remote policy? What's the location? What's the comp expectations? Now, when it goes, what is the industry? Like, is this a specific industry where you can add value even because you work at another company in a different function, but at least you understand the landscape? That's also really, really powerful. It's because, why would a recruiter call you for a job interview as a product manager if you've never been a product manager? If there's nothing in your resume that talks about accomplishments related to product, and if there is absolutely nothing that talks about your domain expertise. So, part of our role as coaches is not just to let the student pick their wish list, it's also make them aware of the situation and push them in some areas where they also can, highlight their strengths. So once we spent enough time identifying, okay, company product manager fit, and hopefully you
Yeah.
identify enough companies on top of the funnel, because at the end of the day, it's a numbers game, right? You can't just say, well, I only want to work for Google. We need to be realistic with the expectations and see what are the options available for you. Because most likely Google, even though you think it's a great fit, might not want to hire you just because they have a certain standard for who they hire as a first-time PM. Um, Once we get to that point, then the next level is to work with the students on crafting their resume and their LinkedIn profile in a way that speaks product, right? So from the headline to featuring the accomplishments in a way that showcases how this impacted the business, how much you know about the market, what are the specific things that you did related to product, even if you didn't have the product manager title, just to catch the interest of a recruiter. Because at the end of the day, in every interview process, after you identify enough companies on top, the next step is to be able to have enough conversations. This is similar to sales. Once you have that first conversation, at some point, you are going to have to demonstrate during that conversation that you're good. The resume is only going to get you the conversation, but you have to sell yourself. So we do a lot of mock interviews to help students structure answers and to be able to highlight their accomplishments in a way that is easier to digest by someone on the other side of the line. And then at some point, and we're seeing this being more and more popular, being more common, in product manager interviews, most PMs or more candidates have to present a case. Companies typically give them a challenge, and then it's up to the candidate to propose a solution and then present it, because that demonstrates first what's your product thinking, and also what are your communication skills. So we work with the students throughout the entire job search process to help maximize their chances of getting a PM job. And then I would say that no matter how amazing your resume is, how amazing your experience is, you're still going to get rejected a ton. So sometimes as coaches, our responsibility is to make them aware of that, how hard it is. You need to put in the work, and it's usually going to take some time. But if you put in the time, you can make it happen. This is not rocket science. We're not talking about PMs are visionaries that were born, and if you are not born with certain skills, oh my God, you'll never be able to make it. Absolutely not true. There are a lot of hard skills that you can acquire, and if you are learning from the right people, and you are putting the right amount of effort, and you know where to apply to the right companies, you are going to make it happen.
No, that's very true, Carlos. And also, we see recently there's a lot of discussion going around the community that are product managers in the current landscape truly product managers, because they might own a very small feature of the whole product. So should we even call them product managers, or do we start calling them feature managers? So what's your take into this? Because I'm sure in the community there's a lot of discussions going around this, and people are trying to understand when they say we own a product or we define what needs to be built on the product. That means we need to have a holistic understanding of the product first, right? But with so many product managers coming into the market, it's 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 basically unavoidable to make them work for a feature. You can't let them work on a product because the products are limited, but the number of people who are entering are increasing day by day. So what's your take into this discussion of product managers versus feature managers?
Look, there's always going to be discussion around what's the best way of doing product versus how product is being done today at a specific company. And it's really important for us as the largest school in product to set those standards and to show best practices. At the same time, it's important to recognize that every company is unique, and and it's not about following the book, following the best practices, or following the template to the T. Those are all good tools, but it's also necessary for product people to apply critical thinking and understand where there is more flexibility. So especially so that's my first point. That being said, and you were asking before about product culture. Companies that already have a chief product officer, or where the CEO was a product manager, those are strong signals to realize that those companies really care about product and are giving them responsibility. So I would if I were a candidate, I was looking for a job, I would definitely try to screen for that. And an easy way to do it is simply using LinkedIn, just to see what's the background of the CEO and how big their product team is. What is the name of what is the title for the highest ranked product person in the organization. So that can give you a good indication of how they're thinking about product. That being said, you never really know until you are there, right? And even within a company, there might be different product teams that are using different techniques. So the reality is that product is still relatively new as a function. Like when I started 10 years ago, there weren't that many companies hiring product managers. So there would be a lot of people trying to do product, but with different set of techniques and with less access to best practices. So they were typically more acting like project managers. So you call it
Mhm.
feature managers, or people who are in charge of making sure that things get shipped on time and quality and budget. And that is an important part of the work, right? Like you want to make sure that you are coordinated with engineers, designers, and other stakeholders. But that clearly is not enough. That's not what a product manager does or should do by the book. A product manager is a more strategic role that includes a connection with the business outcomes. It includes discovery to really understand why we need to build something, what is the problem that we are solving, way before we put this through the factory of shipping a feature. And even after we put it through a factory or not, depending on the process that it's being used at a company, then it's the PM's responsibility to know what is the impact that that's having on the market. How is that new launch performing against the success metrics that were defined upfront? And then what's next? So to me, a product manager or the product function is a much more strategic function that is in charge of identifying what are the biggest opportunities where the company needs to invest their time and money, and then ensuring there is an excellent execution, and then deciding what's next, assuming that sometimes those hypotheses, those executions won't be successful, and it's just part of the process. So the faster we iterate, the faster we get to solutions that work. That, to me, the mindset of a world-class product organization versus an organization that is more stuck into a project management mindset.
Mhm.
No, that's really helpful, Carlos, to understand that having those product handbooks or those frameworks are important, but in real life, it's very hard to see that being played across all the companies, right? But now we'll try to switch gears a bit now, since we know Product School has practitioners and instructors across all global level companies, and the presence of Product School is all across the globe. Here we're gonna play a small game. We're gonna take a name of a few companies, and in a line or so, you have to define their product culture to your understanding, because you've been dealing with product leaders across all the companies to whom we have a list here. So we are sure you'll have some idea about it, or you'll have some take on their product culture. So the first company would be Meta.
Okay. Well, Meta, as you mentioned, like a lot, we partner with a lot of their product leaders who participate as our instructors. Meta has a pretty big product culture. Some people could argue it's more of an engineering culture than a product culture. In any case, they are very much into product, and I give kudos to the CEO. It's a product person, and
Yeah.
the CEO is still very much involved in product reviews and really understands the product roadmap and what's happening. And you can tell it's very public, sharing reviews about their products and how they compare with competitors' products and whatnot. So I think that is very inspiring, and that definitely comes from the top. And from my experience working with product leaders who teach at product school, as well as helping PMs get jobs at Meta, I have to say that that is one of the best product companies in the world.
Perfect. So let's talk about a B2B company now. So let's talk about Microsoft, and specifically if you can talk about LinkedIn as a product, because I know LinkedIn is one product which I think all PMs use very effectively.
Absolutely. So LinkedIn is a great example of a company that is also very product driven. Like the founder and CEO is extremely knowledgeable, and obviously the founder doesn't work as a CEO anymore, but every single CEO that has run LinkedIn is product led. We also work with a CPO and VPs of product at LinkedIn and can vouch for how knowledgeable they are and how much they care about building and how rapidly they iterate considering the scale of their product. Like they were one of the first movers with applications of artificial intelligence. You can see how much content they are generating with artificial intelligence. In other cases, they they are not the first movers, but they're relatively fast when it comes to launching new features and keeping a finger on the pulse. Like LinkedIn really started as a resume company, and today it's truly a community, right? Where there's much more value way beyond that profile page for every individual. So in general, big fan of the product culture that they are creating.
Mhm. Next would be, what do you think about the product culture of Amazon?
By the way, those companies are just so big, right? That it's very hard to give an answer that really qualifies for
Fits
all the
her, yeah.
different products that they're working on. But like Amazon, I think it's different than LinkedIn and Meta in the sense that their definition of product. And I know a lot of the PMs there, they have this role called technical product manager and the product manager. Usually their technical product manager is what a lot of other companies consider product manager. It's someone who is mostly working with engineers and designers. And then their non-technical product managers is usually people who come more from a business background, sometimes business operations, or they study in business school, they work in consulting. So they have a ton of product managers. The thing is, it's important to spend time to understand what are the specifics, because that umbrella term can mean so many different things depending on the product or the group that they are working on. I would say one of the things about their culture, obviously, this is not just for product teams, but in general, it's big on documenting and pretty big on getting things done instead of just using PowerPoints. I think that resonates very well with product people because we want to build, we want to show prototypes, we want to get feedback, we want to move fast. Of course, it's important to get alignment, and there are moments where you need to use other artifacts to do that. But also, I have to say, you're picking some of the best companies in the world.
Yeah.
And they also are like one of the three that you mentioned are part of the Magnificent Seven, right? Like the top seven
Yeah.
companies in public stocks right now, according to the SP 500. So, like, I hope you keep giving me some of those companies. I'm going to keep praising them.
No, no, I'll give you one company, Carlos, which is in the news right now because the founder has been very active and has been very vocal about how product management has been changing. So the company is Airbnb. So recently we heard so many news about how Brian Chesky coming in and sharing that, okay, do you really need product managers? Or product managers need to be clubbed up with product marketing and whatnot. So what is your take on it?
Mhm. Well, one of the things that I don't think everybody understood is that Airbnb is hiring a lot of product managers. Airbnb has a lot of product managers. So it's a company with a very strong product. In fact, I would say probably their main bias is design. And that's because one of their founders, current CEO, Brian Chesky, loves design and comes from that design background. So you can see some of that in their user experience, right? Airbnb has always been one of the pioneers in excellent user experience. And he's also very passionate about product, and he likes to be involved in product reviews and understand how that connects to market. And I think that is great. I think more companies and more product teams should have that obsession for how is our product, how is our next release going to hit the market? What are the success metrics? How can we make this launch more successful? And because at the end of the day, it's all about driving business outcomes. So as I said at the very beginning of this interview, I'm a big fan of product teams that understand they need to build an excellent customer experience and add value, and that is table stakes. That to me is a must, but not enough. The next level is really thinking about the connection to market. So if we want to call this product marketing, that's fine. If we want to call this GTM, go to market, it's fine. If we want to call it product, it's okay. You pick the label, but the point is product teams, product leaders are not just under tech. Product teams are at the table in the intersection between technology and business.
Yes.
Mhm. Well, thank you so much, Carlos, for being such a sport and sharing your insights for these companies. Uh, there's one more question which I wanted to understand from you. We are seeing after the advent of generative AI, lots of founders coming out building their own products. So, since they are very early in their journey of building a startup, what would be your advice to people who are trying to build in startups in terms of how do they define their product culture? What are some of the best practices you would recommend them since they're starting this a journey now? They can maybe imbibe that in their DNA so that in the coming years they'll have a good product culture when they become a big company.
The thing about culture is that, especially at the very beginning, that is very specific to that founder.
Mhm.
Especially, I would say, at least until you get to a point of like 50 people or so, company culture is pretty much the founder culture. It gets to a point, obviously, where company culture is different than the founder's culture because there are more people and it's important to create the space for others to shape that culture. But you can't fake product culture. Like if you are a founder who cares about product, you are going to show that and you are going to naturally gravitate towards attracting people who put effort into product. If you are a founder that has a bias for design or has a bias for sales, that is something that I think is important to be aware of. That's not a bad thing. It's just important to be aware of because that's going to define some of the elements of what your company culture is. I always define culture as this is what people do when nobody's looking.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
um, what can you do to be more product driven to understand the value of product? I think what you guys are doing is exactly it's a perfect example, right? You are spending time talking with product leaders to know how they think. What is the impact of their culture into their business? What are the good elements that you would like to keep for yourself, and what are the elements that you don't think are that relevant? So, in general, I think learning, having access to information, and I would argue not just to product leaders, because obviously we're all biased, right? We're all going to say product is really cool,
Mm.
but like maybe having access to other people, especially successful people, successful founders who maybe didn't have a product culture, can also give you an idea of, well, there are different ways to be successful or to grow a company. It's not that you can only do this if you are product led, but clearly having care for the product, building something that your users love is something that, in my opinion, is table stakes. And I don't know how any company in the current century would ever be successful without doing that, because I don't think it's possible to fake a customer experience.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So thank you so much, Carlos, for sharing all these wonderful insights. I hope all our listeners gained a lot of value from our discussions, right from understanding about product culture to getting into product management. So now, as we move towards the end of our podcast, we would like to hear from you. What are some tips, insights you would like to share with our listeners who are mostly aspiring PMs to first be upskilled in the rapidly changing product management landscape and how to become great product managers in all these great companies?
Mm-hmm. Well, the first thing I would say is when I was 25, I had no idea what product management was. So when I see people that come to me in their early 20s and say, I want to be a PM, I'm like, that is incredible. Like, that's great. You already have such a head start. So it just
Mhm.
shows you that in perspective, you have plenty of time. And the sooner you start, the better.
Mhm.
And in fact, I would argue the people who are listening to your podcast already started, right? They are already curious about product. Maybe they are your classmates. Maybe they already took a different program and they are thinking about this. So that is a very easy, lightweight way to start. I would say at some point you'll max it out, right? Like you start attending these type of events or reading books, and that can get you so far. There's no replacement for hard work. Like at some point you need to do something else with hopefully your own hands. And again, there are different options. Right? The option that we offer to our community is training. We have hands-on training, and we provide a certification to also have market validation, so these students can have another reason to apply to companies and get more phone calls because they showcase that they separate themselves from other people who are just applying for jobs and they have less things to showcase. That's not the only option. You can also try to do it by yourself. There are coaches out there. My point is you need to put in the work. There is no replacement for that next step after the initial discovery. Now, to me, the next step once you're putting in the work is to put in the work consistently. because it's very easy to get excited after a podcast or after even a program. You go, you learn, you meet really cool people, you build something that works, and it's like, oh my God, this is amazing. I would love to now take the next step and work as a product manager at one of these really cool companies. And the reality is that it's going to take time. And that's why we were talking about that job search strategy part. So putting in the work consistently, bold, capital letters, consistently, is something that I can't emphasize enough, because that's ultimately the key to getting a job, the key to growing your career, the key to doing anything. You need to put in the work consistently.
Mhm. Totally agree with you, Carlos. Consistency is the key to all our listeners out there. If they have to take out a few advices from what Carlos mentioned, be consistent, hard work. There is no replacement to that. And then comes your passion and your exploration, wherein you deep dive into podcast, or you read books, or you read XYZ other resources. But Carlos, thank you so much for taking out time and sharing all those amazing insights with us. We are really thrilled to have you firstly on the podcast, because we've been trying to get you on podcast for a long time and you agreed to it. So thank you so much for that. We are 100% sure that all our community people are going to gain a lot of insights through the discussion which we had, because people generally resonate with founders where they start their journey trying to solve a problem which they have faced, where they were facing there themselves, and then they thought, okay, let's step outside our comfort zone and let's solve this problem, so that people like us who will get into the same problem, they'll have a solution through me. So that's a very good way to look at problems in life, and how do you deal as a product leader in general in life also. So thank you so much for sharing all those amazing insights. This officially brings us to the end of today's podcast. Hope all our listeners have enjoyed the discussion and this has helped learn something new. Thank you so much for tuning into Product Unfiltered. Stay tuned for more such exciting episodes.